What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're taking a look at an upcoming brutal action RPG named There Is No Light. Now, this game does have a free demo that's available right now, and we're going to be talking about it. And honestly, guys, my first impressions, this game is super fun. Now, don't get this twisted, right? This isn't like a Souls-like or anything like that. This game is much faster paced, and it honestly feels more like a zippy hack and slash style game, except you don't have very much health and the enemies dish out some serious damage. So you do have to time dodges, you do have to be cognizant of your health and your positioning, but it just feels a lot better and more responsive than a typical Souls-like. Now, this game does take some of the more traditional things we've seen in roguelikes and other hardcore games, like timing those dodges to iframe attacks, managing a rage bar, and swapping between weapons to combo attacks on bosses, right? But there are some key differences, and we'll get to those right after we hear from today's sponsor. So unless you've just wandered in from living in the woods for the past 10 years, chances are you've seen today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Now, this is the biggest mobile game out there right now, and with over 10 million downloads, let's check out why. So first up, we have over 600 different heroes to collect, grow, and sacrifice. That's right, you're going to be feeding your weak heroes to fuel your favorite badass character so they can go out and learn more skills and then take on more challenging bosses. Now, speaking of, let's talk about those bosses for a minute, and one of my favorites is Sylvania, the Guardian of Spirit Keep. Now, she's got it all, right? She's a cleric, she has a triple braid, and she is tough. And if you don't have the right party, she's going to wipe you out super easy. But we do have a trick. Now, you see, Sylvania is all about healing. So she's going to heal up to half her health every single time she gets a turn, and she gets some bonus damage from that. So the trick is to keep healing reduction debuffs on her so she can't heal as much, and because of that, her damage will drastically fall and turn this boss fight into a cakewalk. So it's all about strategy and finding the right heroes for the right battle. So how do we get to a point where we can take on those big bosses? Well, I'm so glad that you guys have asked, because Raid has some great customization options for each hero. You're able to acquire powerful artifacts and equip them on each person to help increase their combat effectiveness. Now, the cool part here is that they each offer different set bonuses. So if you want to have a high-powered glass cannon on your squad, then suit them up in pure attack power gear and get to just destroying anything in your way. If you want a super beefy tank, great. Load them up with armor and health gear and you're set. The game has tons of items to chase and lots of heroes to find, so there's always something for just about any player. And to top all of that off, there's a huge update coming this December. So if you want to get a huge head start in Raid, all you have to do is hit the link in the description below or scan my QR code and you'll get a free epic hero, 200,000 silver, an XP boost, energy refill, and an ancient shard so you can summon another awesome champion as soon as you get in game. You can do all of this by clicking on the mailbox in the upper right hand corner of your screen. Now, let's get back to the video. So what does There Is No Light do different from other action RPGs and other Souls-like games? Well, first off, it's not as hard, and you actually feel like you're able to deal decent amounts of damage. And because of this, boss fights don't seem to last forever, and smaller enemies can be dealt with pretty quickly. This makes the whole experience just feel it feels really good, in my opinion. Now, what I want to do is I want to break down some of these first impressions of this demo and what we can expect in the full game. So to start things off, the story is a pretty simple one, albeit there are some really dark and supernatural elements to it, which I really like. So you, the main character, are referred to as Blondie by this kind of Grim Reaper looking guy who seems to have some pretty crazy powers, right? He's given you these supernatural weapons, these powers you can use, and he's also the one who resurrects you when you die. Plus he has this giant worm that'll like eat you and then transport you places, so there is a lot going on. And there's a power struggle between this character, the Grim Reaper looking guy, and the Church of the Great Hand. And the Great Hand is this huge creature made up of hands. And every year the church sacrifices babies to this Great Hand, who then promises protection from the darkness for all of the poor people that are living underground. Now, I'm not gonna lie, right? The general overarching story I get, but there are some pretty kind of key elements of the story that I feel are missing, and I feel like these will not be filled in until we can get our hands on the full game. But either way, I think it's pretty clear we're gonna be taking down those baby killers and killing that great hand. So I mentioned some weapons that this Reaper guy gives you, right? So what exactly are we looking at? Well, there are 3. And we got our hands on these all throughout the demo. We have the Omen Blade, which is a long sword that deals damage, and when you have enough rage, it'll unleash some really cool lightning attacks. We have the Superbia gloves. So imagine these like super fast boxing gloves that have darkness energy imbued with them. Plus you can do a really kind of cool AoE full of dark energy to deal damage to everything around you. And then lastly, we have the Malachium. Now this is a great sword that you can either slice with, or you can throw it like a boomerang to deal some range damage, and it'll come back to you as well. Now, both the gloves and the great sword can be used for a very short duration before they temporarily break and need to recharge. Now I'm assuming this is probably to avoid them being abused because they are pretty powerful. So it's very important to almost treat them like cooldowns and then rotate through them when you need to. Now your Omen Blade is different. It never breaks and it can be used no matter what, so you can just constantly have that thing out, whipping around, slashing things up. And to top all of this off, each one of these weapons has a set of passives that'll change up the way they perform. So for instance, your greatsword throws can actually plant bombs on enemies, and then when you break your weapon and it begins recharging, those bombs will detonate, giving you some extra damage and altering the way that you can play. The same thing goes for the Omen and for the Superbia gloves. Now, using these kind of weapons in combat is one thing, but they also have some perks to use outside of combat. For instance, the Superbia gloves can give you a haste buff that you can use to run faster. So what does combat look like in There Is No Light? Well, I mentioned it was a fast and brutal experience, and that's exactly what it is. I mean, I felt like this game is less about being tactical and more about timing dodges and weaving attacks when you can. See, there isn't like a cooldown or a stamina bar in this game, so you don't really have to manage that. So you can just spam dodges all over the place to avoid attacks, and then dive back in to slice up your enemies. So for instance, when I was fighting a boss, it's just a flurry of attack and then timing dodges and then interrupting his attacks in order to beat him. Now, if you look, you can see these yellow bars above his head. Those are attacks that I can interrupt by performing my rage ability. And this is a special skill that I get when I get enough rage, which is the red bar at the bottom. Now, all of this plays very nicely together, and it really makes the game handle well. I feel like there is a good balance of being powerful yet vulnerable at the same time. So in short, combat is very well done, attacks feel meaty, I feel zippy, and the controls feel extremely tight. So what else do we have to look forward to in this demo? Well, as of right now, that's really it. You have 2 big boss battles, you have some really cool fights, and you get introduced to the world. But I mean, the game itself is so well designed, and I know some people aren't fans of pixel art, but it's gorgeous. It is really a well done pixel art. Now, the levels do feel immersive, the story and the lore elements feel good, and ultimately I think if the price is right, we're looking at a solid title coming up. Some of the things they might need to watch out for is people are going to assume this is going to be a soul-crushing game because of the term brutal action RPG, and for those who do want that type of experience, they might feel let down by how, quote, easy the game is. So that is something that to keep in mind if you're somebody who's looking for just a experience where you're going to die over and over and over again. This might not be the game for you, but I would say the demo is free, give it a try. So speaking of the full title, we do have some information on what we can expect coming up. The game promises a 30-hour long story, over 70 different enemy types to fight, another weapon that we don't know about quite yet, and a karma system that'll cause your choices to impact the world. Now, the karma system is something that I've seen a little bit in the demo. You get these check marks and these X's to either agree or disagree with characters in the game. And depending on how you answer, you can change the narrative and how the game will play out. So keep that in mind as you're spamming through the dialogue. It does have more meaning than some other games, so you need to weigh your options. And I really do like when they add these type of things into games because, one, it gives you a reason to replay the game, but two, it feels like you actually have to consider each option rather than just blasting through the dialogue to get to the end of the game. So something to keep in mind. So all in all, folks, I mean, the demo was a great introduction to the world. I love how dark and gritty it is. The combat was a huge selling point for me. It was incredibly well done. And like I said, it was just very tight and responsive, which is key for these type of games. I don't like when my character is sluggish. I don't like when I hit an input and there's a delay. All of those type of things really just frustrate me and drive other players crazy. I know that as well. So I'm glad that they really kind of nailed that. Now, there isn't a release date pinned to this one quite yet, but I would highly encourage all of you to get out there and try the demo to see if it's something that you would enjoy. And if you do get out there, let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear more about it. But guys, that wraps this one up. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.